I was sitting on my grandmother's old porch swing, the same one where I'd spent endless summer evenings as a kid, when my phone rang. My mother was on the line, her voice shaking as she told me that two men in official-looking uniforms had just served Grandma with papers claiming her house was being seized for unpaid community fees. According to them, she had 7 days to vacate before a forced removal. My name is Bill Lawson. I'm 41 years old and work as a construction project manager for a commercial building company in Asheville, North Carolina. For the past 18 years, my job has been overseeing large projects, coordinating contractors, reviewing contracts, and making sure everything is completed on time and on budget. But none of that experience mattered in that moment, compared to the crushing realization that someone was threatening my grandmother's home. My grandmother, Evelyn Lawson, is 89 years old and has lived in the same modest white farmhouse with its wraparound porch and towering old oak trees for 67 years, ever since the day she married my grandfather back in 1958. They bought this land with their combined savings and built their entire life here, piece by piece. This was the house where my father and his 3 siblings grew up, the place where my grandfather worked his vegetable garden every morning until he passed away 12 years ago, the place where every grandchild, including me, spent summers learning to fish in the creek behind the property and helping Grandma make her famous peach preserves in a kitchen that still had the same yellow curtains she sewed more than 40 years ago. This wasn't just a house. It was our family's anchor, the center of every holiday, every crisis, every reunion. It was where Grandma held us together through deaths, divorces, military deployments, and hard years, always with quiet strength, warm advice, and a never-ending glass of sweet tea. The idea that criminals were trying to steal this sacred place from an 89-year-old woman who had given her entire life to her family made something crack in my chest. It wasn't just anger. It was a deep, protective instinct toward the person who had always protected all of us. And yet, nothing in my 41 years could have prepared me for how far this fight to save Grandma's house would go, or how many people it would end up touching the community that loved her just as fiercely as we did. I told my mother I would be there in 20 minutes and drove faster than I should have through the winding mountain roads to Grandma's home in the Fairview community, where she had lived her entire married life. When I arrived, I found Grandma sitting in her living room, surrounded by my mother, my 2 aunts, and my uncle. All of them were staring at a stack of official-looking papers spread across the coffee table, a table that had been in that house since before I was born. Grandma's hands trembled as she clutched her reading glasses, and seeing her frightened and confused broke something inside me that I didn't know could break. "Grandma, what happened?" I asked, kneeling beside her chair and taking her hand the same way she had taken mine countless times when I was scared as a child. "2 men came this morning, Billy," she said, using the name she called me since the day I was born. "They said I owe money for community fees. They had papers saying the county is taking my house because I didn't pay. They said I have 7 days to leave, or they'll bring the sheriff to remove me. Billy, I don't understand. I've lived here for 67 years. This is my home. Where would I go?" I picked up the papers, my hands shaking as I read through the fake legal language. They claimed she owed $43,000 in accumulated community assessment fees, and that the property was being seized through eminent domain proceedings. The documents were carefully designed to look real, complete with fake court seals and dense legal wording that would confuse almost anyone, especially an 89-year-old woman who had never dealt with anything more complicated than paying her property taxes. My mother, Linda, was crying softly. "Bill," she called me in a panic. She thought she was losing the house. "She's been here since before I was born. This is where your dad died. This is where we all come home to. We can't let them take it." My Uncle Robert, usually the quietest person in the room, looked furious. They scared her. They threatened her in her own home, the home she shared with her father for 50 years. Someone is going to pay for that. I examined the documents with the same critical eye I use when reviewing construction contracts. Within minutes, I spotted multiple red flags, the wrong county seal format, fake case numbers, references to court proceedings that didn't exist, and most glaring of all, the claim that a private residence could be seized for HOA fees through eminent domain, something that made absolutely no legal sense. "Grandma, these papers are fake. I said gently, keeping my voice calm even as fury burned inside me. Someone is trying to scare you into leaving your house or paying money you don't owe. You are not losing your home, but we need to call the police right now. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. Are you sure, Billy? They seemed so official. They said the county sent them. I'm absolutely sure. I told her. Nobody is taking your house. This is fraud, and whoever did this to you is going to face consequences. I called the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office and explained that someone had served my 89-year-old grandmother with fraudulent seizure papers, terrifying her in a home she had lived in for 67 years. The dispatcher heard the urgency in my voice and, after learning my grandmother's age, immediately confirmed deputies were on the way. Deputy Collier arrived within 15 minutes. When he stepped into Grandma's living room and saw her surrounded by worried family members, his expression showed both professional focus and genuine compassion. Ma'am, I'm Deputy Collier. Can you tell me what happened? Grandma, still shaken, described the two men in black tactical vests who claimed to be county officials serving seizure papers. Deputy Collier reviewed the documents carefully, his jaw tightening as he read. Ma'am, these are fraudulent. The county does not seize private homes for HOA fees through eminent domain. Someone is running a scam targeting homeowners, and they made a serious mistake targeting you. He took detailed statements from Grandma about the men's appearance and what they said. I handed over the papers and the photos I had taken. Deputy Collier then called for a detective, explaining that this was a clear case of elder fraud involving a vulnerable victim, Detective Marguerite Crawford. They arrived and spent more than an hour with our family, carefully documenting everything and treating Grandma with a level of gentleness and respect that made me deeply grateful for compassionate law enforcement. When Detective Crawford learned Grandma's age, how long she had lived in the house, and how the criminals had terrorized her, her expression hardened with resolve. Mrs. Lawson, she said, what happened to you wasn't just fraud. It was elder abuse. Targeting an 89-year-old woman with fake legal documents meant to steal her home is one of the cruelest scams we investigate. We will find whoever did this. Over the next 3 days, our family closed ranks around Grandma. We took turns staying with her because she was afraid to be alone, worried the men might come back. My aunts created a schedule, so someone was always there. My cousin started a family group chat, sharing photos and memories of Grandma's house to remind her why this place was worth fighting for. And I began doing something I hadn't expected. I started telling Grandma's neighbors what had happened. The response was overwhelming. Grandma had lived in Fairview for 67 years. She had been part of this community longer than many residents had been alive. She brought casseroles to every funeral, attended every church social, and sent birthday cards to children and grandchildren of neighbors for decades. When people learned someone had tried to steal her house, the community became furious and fiercely protective. Mrs. Patterson from down the road, who was 76 herself, showed up with a chocolate cake and tears in her eyes. Evelyn has been my friend for 43 years, she said. Someone tried to take her home over my dead body. What can we do? The support kept growing. Someone created a Save Evelyn's House page on social media that went viral locally. Neighbors organized a fundraiser to help cover any legal costs. Even after we explained the papers were fake and Grandma owed nothing, they insisted they didn't care. They just wanted to show their support. The Fairview Community Center offered to host a gathering for Grandma. More than 200 people attended, many whose lives Grandma had touched over 6 decades, being a quiet, constant presence in the neighborhood. People stood up and shared stories of her kindness, her strength, her welcoming home that had been a refuge for so many over the years. Grandma sat in a place of honor, overwhelmed by the love surrounding her, tears streaming down her face as person after person told her how much she meant to them and promised no one would ever take her home. Meanwhile, Detective Crawford's investigation gained traction. The fake documents were traced back to 2 men running property fraud schemes across North Carolina, Wellington Burke and Livingston Tate. They targeted elderly homeowners with fake seizure notices, hoping to extort payments or frighten confused seniors into leaving so they could claim the property. But they had made a catastrophic mistake targeting Evelyn Lawson. She wasn't just any elderly woman. She was a pillar of her community, and her family and neighbors were not about to let her be victimized. Burke and Tate were arrested within a week. When prosecutors learned they had targeted an 89-year-old woman who had lived in her home for 67 years and served her papers designed to terrify her, the charges included elder abuse with enhanced penalties. The community fundraiser raised over $18,000 for Grandma, even though she didn't need it. We chose to donate the money, in her name, to an organization that helps elderly victims of fraud. The trial took place 8 months later. Grandma testified, her voice trembling but steady, about how the men had scared her into believing she would lose the home she had shared with her late husband for 50 years. My mother testified about receiving the panic call from her mom, who thought she was being evicted. I testified about finding Grandma terrified inside her own home. But what moved the courtroom most was when 15 of Grandma's neighbors testified one after another about what Evelyn Lawson meant to their community and what her home represented. They spoke of 67 years of kindness, casseroles, prayers, and presence during their hardest moments. They described Grandma's house as a landmark of stability and love. The prosecutor presented evidence that Burke and Tate had targeted 12 other elderly homeowners, emphasizing that targeting Evelyn Lawson, a woman who had spent 67 years building a life, a family, and a community in one house, showed extraordinary cruelty. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. Guilty on all counts, including elder abuse and exploitation. Sentencing was severe under North Carolina's elder protection laws. Burke received 19 years in state prison. Tate was sentenced to 16 years. Both were ordered to pay restitution to all victims. 6 months after the trial, our entire family gathered at Grandma's house for our annual 4th of July celebration, the same tradition we had upheld for as long as I could remember. More than 50 family members filled the house and yard where Grandma had raised 4 children and welcomed dozens of grandchildren and great-grandchildren. As the sun set and fireflies appeared, I sat with Grandma on the porch swing, the same swing where I sat the day I learned her house was under threat. Grandma, I said, when those men tried to take your house, I was terrified we'd lose the place that holds all our memories. But fighting to keep it showed me something I hadn't fully understood. This house isn't our sanctuary because of what's inside it. It's our sanctuary because of the love you built here and shared with everyone who walked through that door. Grandma squeezed my hand, her grip still strong at 89. Billy, I've lived in this house for 67 years. I raised my babies here. I buried my husband from here. I welcomed every grandchild into the world and brought them home to this porch. When those men tried to take it, I thought I'd lose everything. But you and your mother and our family and all our neighbors fought for me. You showed me that home isn't just a building. It's the people who love and protect you. Those men are in prison for 19 and 16 years. I said, I know, Grandma replied softly. Your mother told me. I don't wish them harm, but I'm glad they can't hurt other families the way they try to hurt ours. You're not just our grandmother, I said, my voice thick with emotion. You're the heart of this family and this community. That's why 200 people showed up. That's why your neighbors testified. That's why we fought so hard. This house is your sanctuary, but you are ours. Grandma cried quietly, looking out at the family filling the yard she had cared for over 67 years. I am blessed, Billy. So blessed. If an elderly family member or beloved elder in your community is targeted with property seizure claims, eviction threats, or documents demanding payment or relocation, verify everything immediately with law enforcement and never let them face it alone. Share your experiences in the comments to help protect other vulnerable elders. Subscribe for more stories about families and communities standing up for those who spent their lives protecting us. Criminals target elderly homeowners because they hope seniors won't have support to fight back. But when families and communities rally around their elders, those criminals learn that attacking someone's grandmother brings consequences they never expected. Our elders built the homes and communities we cherish. We protect them with everything we have. Never let anyone steal their sanctuary.